All right, guys. Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Outlap Critical, and I'm your host Jackson. I wanted to talk about the Dutch Grand Prix, and I think it's going to be one of the best episodes we've done here, um, because the Dutch Grand Prix was one of my favorite races so far this season. It had intrigue, it had overtakes, it had we didn't know who was going to win. A lot of things that we like about racing, love about racing, we saw in this race. Stay tuned, check out the entire episode. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover Ferrari and some of the crazy things that happened during the race with them. We're also going to be covering, what Formula One should be doing with some of these racetracks that we have that typically don't turn out great racing. Without further ado, let's get started. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and follow the channel. We are trying to get this thing going, and then also check us out on TikTok and here on YouTube. So let's jump right into the Dutch Grand Prix. Before we get too deep into anything, I want to look right at the race beginning. The race start to me were very revealing about some of the things that we had questions about when it comes down to Kimi Antonelli and how he's going to be, handled by some of the other drivers on the grid who aren't his teammate. And so, let's check out the race start. One second. All right, so the thing I want to focus in on most when we start this race start here. Yeah, and so if you notice, both the Mercedes and the McLaren got off the line extremely well. And once they did, you saw that Kimi really took that outside line hard, which showed his intention for that race. That he was basically going to be racing hard the entire time, and Lando basically had to back out of it. Now, if you've been following the program for a while, you know how we feel about Lando Norris. Extremely exciting racer. We're going to talk about him a little bit later today. But the thing about Lando is sometimes his wheel to wheel leaves a little bit to be desired. And it's going to kind of be contradictory because later on we're going to talk about how great some of his wheel to wheel was. But during this race in particular, I think we got to find out that Kimi is basically going to give every single other driver on the grid the exact same kind of energy that he does with his partner George. And so this was kind of one of the first races we got to see what would happen when you placed Kimi Antonelli next to somebody other than his partner or his teammate, and how the other drivers on the grid are going to react to Kimi when they actually have a car that can compete with his. And so this is one of the rare races where we actually got to see that, and it didn't disappoint. Some of the cool things about this race, I thought, was the fact that when Kimi got in front, it wasn't just off to the races and gone. It wasn't a set order right off the bat. There was really nothing settled halfway through the race. We were still looking at it like, okay, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? And so that's the kind of racing that I think we're all looking forward to, the kind of racing that we want. I can't say enough about the Dutch Grand Prix and what the drivers did out there. Now, of course, we can't talk about the race without talking about Max Verstappen and the big crash he had. So let's take a look at that. So, a rare mistake by Max Verstappen, going into the wall there, dipping his tires into the pavement or into the painted part of the track. And you saw the impact. One, shout out to the designers of these cars because that was high impact, and Max walked away from it no problem. But then two, shout out to all the Formula One drivers that have such great reaction time because Max obviously didn't get hit by anybody else, and he was in close proximity to about 5 or 6 drivers. And then Gabby right behind him. Speaking of which, Gabby right behind him had a similar, not similar accident, but a similar part of the track where he kind of went off. And the reaction time of these drivers, guys, has to be studied. Like it's incredible. So let's take a look at what happened with Gabby Bordello. Guys, if you saw Nico Hulkenberg's onboard and how close he came to like T-boning his teammate, which probably would have been fatal, incredible. I keep using the word incredible. I don't know what other word to use here. Um, Absolutely made a decision. Wasn't just he went in blind, but at the last moment had to react to where Gabby was actually at in the last moment and decided to go high side instead of low side. Low side would have caused a crazy accident. High side would is gave us what we had, which was one car sliding around the outside of the other, which thankfully saved Gabby from a crazy, crazy, terrible accident. So the fitness of these drivers and like the reaction time of these drivers can't be stated enough. And so glad that Max Verstappen is okay. Glad that Gabby Bortoleto is okay, and we ended up having a crazy good race right after that. And so basically, right after the red flag, and we got everything cleared up, and the racing got started again. We ended up with a very good race. Um, I think that the rain being threatening every now and again kind of added to the intrigue of it. But for the most part, a straightforward race that gave us a lot of action on track. And so a lot of the things that I want to talk about given this race was Lando Norris is crazy fast. I mean, obviously he's a Formula One champion, but what I'm trying to say by that is, you give Lando a capable car, and he's one of those guys that I think can contend regardless of who else is around him. So, he has his troubles racing Max, but Max is relatively more aggressive than just about anybody else on the track. Um, but then you look at somebody like a uh, Kimi Antonelli, for instance. Um, he raced Kimi very hard. Let's look at that overtake at the end. Like, this is what Formula One is all about. This overtake that Lando did here. Check this out. So aggressive driving by Lando. Risky, looking for opportunistic. Um, I think he took, well, one, he took Kimmy by surprise. And I think Kimmy knew the writing was on the wall, but I think Lando took him by surprise when he did it. And then when it comes to how he did Lewis, Lewis just had his tires were cooked. There was no way he was going to be able to defend that anyway. And so, I really thought, I was really impressed by Lando, and this championship picture is starting to heat up to where if they do good at Monza, I think that we have a contender that is alongside Ferrari with what they're doing as well with Lewis, or we could have a three-way battle for the championship here. Um, and so we covered Gabby's crash and what was going on with Nico and what's going on with Max. Um, let's let's jump right into what's going on with Ferrari. I think the Ferrari dynamic really needs to be studied. I think I can't understand why a corporation that is doing so well. In fact, I want to look that up. Um, a corporation that is a billion-dollar corporation that can't seem to get one simple thing in order, which is strategy. You know, how can this same thing be the exact same problem every single race? There's some kind of strategy call. There's something involving Lewis Hamilton where it ends up affecting him negatively. There's something going on with the team internally. There's always something going on outside of the actual racing that is contributing to to the downfall of the team. And so let's jump right into that coming up. All right, so I want to jump right into the Lewis Hamilton of it all. Um, the the thing about it is, Lewis is a very, very experienced racing car driver at this point, obviously. A proven champion, knows exactly what's going on. And when Ferrari brought him in, they had to anticipate that he would have specific demands or things that he will want done, and especially when it comes to like how we actually approach, our racing with teammates, things like that. Some call it a number one, number two driver, whatever you want to call it. At this point, Lewis is the only one that's actually in the championship for the team. So one would think that all the things happening for the team would be directed towards Lewis Hamilton. But sometimes Charles gets the better of Lewis, and sometimes I don't want to say gets the better of Lewis, but sometimes let's look at the beginning. All right. So In the beginning, this is what I want to talk about because there's a couple of things that contribute to this race start that I think people are missing because it looks like, of course, Charles jumps Lewis in the beginning, and then that's that. But there's a little more to it, and I want you to pay attention to a couple of things. And so I want you to pay attention to George Russell, who's going to be starting in P3. Check out his racing start and what happens as a result of that. So what I want you guys to notice about that most is that George did not get off the line the best. And because he did not get off the line the best, Oscar had to basically take avoiding action. Because he had to take avoiding action, Charles had to take avoiding action. Because Charles took avoiding action, Lewis almost took Max off off the track. And if you're listening to Max's in their radios, his team radio, he's even on the radio saying that Charles pushed Lewis into him, which is exactly what happened, which contributed to why Lewis ended up in the position he ended up in. And so Lewis basically had to fight to get back to Charles in the first place because he gets overtaken by Oscar Piastri as well. And so that race start notwithstanding, throughout the race, Lewis and Charles basically are around each other for the entirety of the race. And at some point, because of their strategies are different, it's going to require for Charles to allow Lewis to get through. And let's take a look at what happens here. All right, so, let's take a look at what happens here. So I want you guys to understand that on the live broadcast, they give us the team radio after they've had a chance to listen to what's going on, and they pick and choose what they're going to let us hear. So in other words, for the most part, things that are happening and we're hearing have already happened. And so it sounds as though Lewis is calling for them to switch places around lap 42, but I think it was probably around lap 41. And on top of that, it took Charles 3 laps to do what he was told and basically get into the pits. And so they told him around lap 41, 42 to get in the pits. He didn't get into the pits until around 44, which is crazy to me. It cost Lewis, like once Lewis got free, he was 1.3 seconds faster. Get that, guys, 1.3 seconds faster once he finally got free of his teammate. Now, of course, the question is going to be, why didn't you just go around him? Guys, you don't want to waste the energy and waste the tires on fighting your teammate, and it's going to slow you down. And so we're on different strategies. The team has more information than you do. Follow directions, and possibly we can get something done here. But instead, Charles does what he does, and we end up in the situation what happens here. And so Charles wasn't done though, because during the race, Charles absolutely not only did he do the, I'm not going to go into the pits whenever I'm told to. He also basically ruined Lewis's last chance to get onto the podium. And so look at this. It's just a bit of selfishness from Charles, if you ask me. But let's take a look at this here. During the race, Lewis was basically chasing Charles down Lewis was basically chasing George down towards the very, very end of the race. Now, Lewis was setting up that final overtake and was very, very close on George's bumper, basically, when that VSC came out. Now, when the VSC went back in, that was what you were seeing there in that video. And Charles had the opportunity to basically hold position or go for that overtake. And what you saw there was not George pulling away from Lewis. What you saw there was Lewis saving a bit of energy for that last overtake that he was going to attempt. And when he did that, when he did that, Charles took that as an opportunity to go for the overtake, basically. And when he did that, Lewis has to defend. George goes free. End of the race happens as it does. And so it's a little bit uncharacteristic of Charles, I guess you could say. I mean, he's kind of like that, but this was we need to have a conversation, I think, and that needs to probably be between Lewis and Charles. Personally, one-on-one, let him know, hey, what's going on here with this. Lewis ended up in front of you fair and square. That's just how that's how the game works. He ended up in front of you fair and square. He's the one that's actually fighting for. He's actually the one fighting for a championship right now. He outqualified you. Like, all these things are lining up. All right. And Charles is basically making decisions. Like, let's figure this out. Let's say he does possibly get around Lewis at that point. Are we risking an accident to get around him? Because you saw how close he was to going off track then. That was going to be basically the only place he was going to get around, and why risk it? Especially when you know that your teammate is fighting a battle in front of you. And so it's just a bit of selfish driving for me. And had he been more of a team player, who knows? We might be looking at Lewis getting around Charles or George, and then Charles also getting around George. But we'll never know because of Charles driving. So they got to get that together. We got to take the ego out of the driving. Charles has got to figure out that, hey, what's fair is fair. When Lewis is asked to switch places, he does. A lot of times Lewis does it without being asked. If you check some of those old races, and the thing about it was interesting. You saw Mercedes do this exact thing. Mercedes executed the swap when it was necessary because, and um, I want to give a shout out to Apex Noir, the group that we do race reviews, and we're doing the races live, things like that. And one of the conversations that was had was with one of our co-hosts. Now let's look at this here. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get this organized. Okay, so of course it's gonna cover a whole face. Let me try this again. Hold on. There we go. All right. So me and one of my co-hosts, Doc Ash, we call her we call her Doc, but we had this conversation as to why George was being asked to switch places in the first place, and her thought process was that he was asked to switch places because they knew what was going to happen if they didn't. And I thought, that's probably not what happened, and we argued about that back and forth, but I was dead wrong. She was right. They absolutely switched places because they knew what was going to be happening. Also, guys, if you don't know this already, let me pause the timer here. If you don't know this already, she has written an excellent book. And it's going to be a series, a mini series almost. I don't want to give you too much about it. But it's down there in the corner. It says Danger. First of all, you're gonna have to follow her to find out. But it's about Formula One, and it's really interesting. And I want you guys to check that out, please. But if you haven't followed her, please like, subscribe, and follow her as well. As well as show you guys this. I was saying earlier that we as a group get together and we do these races live as well. And so if you look at Apex Noir there, make sure you like and follow there as well to see us a live reaction to the races, live game time. I mean, it's really good. It's for the culture, so you guys really enjoy that there. But anyway, yeah, they absolutely knew that what was going to happen with George should he stay where he was at, and so they basically had Kimmy switch. He didn't really make an impact on Lando; he was already gone at that point. But that I think must be said that Mercedes also knows where their fortunes lie. And if you listen to the commentary afterwards, George did a very good job of explaining it, where Kimmy had made some decisions earlier to help to protect the team. And so when it was time to switch, although George didn't want to, you kind of heard that on the radio, he didn't really want to. He understood what had to be done and did so right away. That's the difference between what's happening at Ferrari and what's happening at Mercedes. Lewis alluded to this as well. It's crazy that he gets to see the other team execute flawlessly, and it's happening literally right in front of him, and then he has to fight his teammate. Like, it just doesn't compute to me. And it's anti-competitive. It's anti. Y'all don't want to win. That's my problem with Ferrari. Y'all just don't seem to want to win. And so anyway, with Ferrari, I think that going forward, I hope Lewis. If you guys heard Lewis on that radio, look at this. Listen to Lewis on the radio, guys. He's had enough. Check this. And he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be happy. Why is he having to basically tell them that during the VSC he should be getting the box immediately? Like, we should have guys running into the pit right away, but yet he's basically having to remind them that, hey, this needs to be done, by the way, just so you know, so I can fight for a win here. I mean, what are we trying to accomplish at Ferrari? Like, I've always said that Ferrari would prefer to win their way than to win it all. And so if it's not going to be on the backs of what they're doing and they're doing only, then they don't want to do it. They remind me of the Dallas Cowboys. If it's not about Jerry Jones, then they don't want to win. It's the craziest thing in the world to me. And so I hope Lewis has addressed this with the team. I hope he has was as blunt with them as he was on that radio, and I hope you see something different. And so, with Ferrari, you never know, but I guess we will find out. All right, guys. The last thing I want to talk about was why do we even race at tracks that they know that cars have difficulties passing on? Like, we're continuously on tracks to where cars have. Okay, so I'm gonna read off a couple of tracks that we know for a fact cars have an impossible time passing on. And so you got Monaco, you got Zandvoort, you got Suzuka, you got Singapore, you got Melbourne, Melbourne, and Barcelona. Lots of tracks, lots of tracks that you have a really, really hard time overtaking on. So therefore, less action. And so we're busy trying to figure out why, or trying to make the races more entertaining. Yet we're racing on tracks where it's basically impossible to do the one thing that people are looking forward to seeing, which is the overtake. And so I went through and I decided, you know what if we tweaked it up a little bit? What if we gave them a different kind of circuit? So this is going to be how I suggest Formula One switches their track map up. And, feel free to throw me a little something when y'all figure out that this is an amazing idea and you want to follow along with it. Let's move fast. All right. We're going to start with Bahrain. All right. Move on. We're going to go to Malaysia. That's going to be a cool circuit, by the way. Then to China, Shanghai, Baku. All right. Here's where we're adding a couple of new ones. All right. Or old ones. We're going to go to Turkey. We are going to go to Monaco still because it's historic. And so we will go to Monaco still, but that's right at round 6. Let's turn it into an all-star weekend. Then we have, we're going to go to Magny-Cours. Please correct me if I'm wrong if you're from France, but that's in France. We're going to go to Silverstone. Again, not the easiest track to overtake on, but it is a historic track, and so we'll go with that. We're going to go to Hockenheimring in Germany, the Hockenheimring in Germany. And then from there, we're going to go to the Red Bull Ring, Monza. We'll go to Montreal. And then we're going to go back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the road course. I think that's going to be fascinating to see Formula One cars on that track. And I say fascinating to see because I'm speaking this into existence. Let's get this thing done, guys. Then we're going to do the Circuit of the Americas in Austin. We'll do Mexico City, Las Vegas, Interlagos, and then finishing the Formula One season, a 20-round racing season in Abu Dhabi. What do you guys think? Should Formula One even be racing on these tracks that just are impossible to pass on in the first place? Are they too stuck in how they feel about what they want done? So let me know what you guys think about that. I think it's a pretty interesting list. I think that we can get some really good racing out of that, and I hope you guys agree. But let me know what your thoughts are on that, and of course everything else. And so, guys, today I thought we had a great episode about a lot of things. The racing right now is going outstanding. Let me just pause it. There we go. The racing right now is going outstanding. Formula One is in a better place right now than I can remember in a very, very long time. And we're competitive. There's so many drivers right now that, we just, like, at the beginning of the year, we thought for sure it was going to be George. And then pretty much right off the bat, it went on to Kimi. And Kimi's been in front the entire time, but meanwhile, in the background, you have Lewis sneaking up. You have Lando sneaking up. Max is still there. Don't let Max fool you. Max is still there. And then, of course, all those drivers you mentioned have teammates that could also kind of interject some things in there. And not all those people will be title contenders, but what they can do is play the role of spoiler, for instance. And so if there's somebody who is taking points away from Kimi Antonelli, for instance, then those people will, for instance, help someone like a Lewis Hamilton or a Lando Norris or a Max Verstappen collect enough points to get into the title fight by the end of the year. Mercedes still hasn't had that many issues as far as Kimi Antonelli's into the garage is concerned. And so, you got to wonder if he has a couple more of those issues. All it's going to take is a couple DNFs, guys. A couple DNFs. While somebody, the right person wins, and when I say the right person, I mean whoever would be able to collect the most points to actually put this into a challenge. Whoever were to end up winning that would be, the beneficiary of this. And so, all right, guys, thanks again for joining me on this episode. Like, comment, subscribe. Help us grow this thing. Help us grow this thing up. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. Check us out there. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll have another one for you in a few days. Talk to you soon.